Hey guys, what's going on? This is another Outdoorsman 1 video. Today we're talking about part 2 of getting ready for one of my weekend overlanding trips. Today we're going to be talking about gear and packing my truck and how I carry my gear in totes and stuff like that. If you haven't watched part 1, I suggest you go watch that video before you watch the rest of this video. I'll link it in the cards right there. But it's talking about planning, prep work, what you should do ahead of time. And I think that that's a good number 1, and then obviously gear and your rig is a solid number 2. Okay, so before we dive into this video, it's literally brought to you by this patch. If you want to see more videos like this, please go onto my Instagram and DM me and buy one of my patches for the time being until I get a website where you can buy them. And when I do get that website, because you guys bought enough of them, then I will put links all over this right here. But go on and buy my patch and support this video. Alright guys, so the things we're going to be talking about today are the fundamentals of how I get ready for one of my weekend trips, or a longer trip if I decided to take time off work, or it's a holiday weekend or something like that, and I'm going to go spend 4 days in Moab, for example. So you can see we're here at my storage unit. I have a storage unit, and that's kind of a preface to everything else, but that's because I'm a young guy. I'm 23 years old, and I've got way too much stuff for my townhouse. I live in a shared townhouse with some other guys, and I just don't have the space, so I have a storage unit not too far away from my house, and that's where I store pretty much all of my adventure gear. We'll take a peek in there in a minute and kind of look at how I get things ready. But what we're talking about is my rig, how I get my rig ready, and so here we go. So before I dive in really deep into anything, let me know what you think about the new wrap from g.o.a.t Truck Armor. If you haven't watched that video, after this video, go watch that. g.o.a.t Truck Armor magnet wraps, super cool. Link it in the card and in the description below and at the end of this video. But we're talking about the rig. This is my 2014 TRD Tacoma, and this is how I kind of organize it. You guys are pretty familiar with the rig if you follow me on Instagram, but if you just here on YouTube, I'm kind of lacking in some of the videos that I have on the rig. So stay tuned. There will be some going back and explaining when I switched from the camper shell to the bed rack. Anyways, got a bed rack. Go follow me on Instagram if you kind of want to see the progression a little bit more actively. Anyways, I pretty much roll around with my Roam rooftop tent. This is the Roam Vagabond rooftop tent. Pretty much roll around with that rooftop tent up there all the time. I've got a half-size bed rack, just the 12-inch one from RCI Metalworks off-road, and it does a good job at keeping the tent underneath the draft of my cab. And then also I've got the rack on top, and sometimes my spare tires up there, sometimes my spare tires in the bed of my truck. Kind of just depends on what look I'm kind of going for, but that should be changing here soon. And that's only because I've got the air tank underneath. Also, I've got that video on my channel about onboard air. Anyways, I like Plano, whatever the company actually goes by. All of my boxes are Plano boxes. I have a video on comparing the Rubbermaid Adventure Packer to these Plano outdoors boxes. I don't know what they call them, I call them Plano boxes. The medium one, the small one, and the big one. It's kind of what I call them. The big ones have wheels. Anyways, that's pretty much what I store everything in. Got my water in a blue jerry can, but now let's kind of dive into what goes in individual things. Alright guys, so right now I'm going to talk about the things that pretty much live inside my truck all the time, and then at this time right here I will dive into things that I add to my truck when I'm going on one of these weekend trips. Okay, so since it's the end of summer, I'm trying to wear shorts as much as I can because that's going to go away here soon. Anyways, I pretty much roll around with my cooler in the bed of my truck all the time. I don't know, I just keep drinks in here even if they're not cold, especially during this like fall time when It's cold at night, but it's, you know, warm during the day. It's nice to have a nice Coke Zero or a Diet Coke or nice cold water. Or these are my jam, the like Nestle Splashes, the flavored waters that are like 5 calories. These are my jam. These like got me off of caffeine. So I pretty much roll around with this back here all the time. It doesn't really move around too much. So that's kind of like an everyday carry in the truck. Also, this little black box that I recently got from Walmart for like 12 bucks or something like that. I like Plano, made in the USA. Makes me feel good about my country kind of stuff. Anyways, these boxes are great. I have purchased a couple of them since because they're stackable and they do really a good job, because I like the fact that they're hinged and also they actually have a gasket that go around them. So I've just got a couple little lantern solar lights in here. I've got a lot of my air up and air down tools in here. Also just kind of some of the things that I just throw around in my truck. I've kind of condensed those down into this and to my my get home bag, blowout bag, bug out bag, whatever you want to call it. And I've really condensed everything down into those things because I just hated having stuff in all the pockets and everything all over my truck, especially if somebody new gets in my truck. I go on a date, heaven forbid, or something like that, and somebody's like, oh, there's stuff all over, and I'm like, oh, that has a reason and that has a reason. So I condensed them down into this and into my get home bag, which is in the back of my truck, which will be a separate video when I get around to it. Anyways, a lot of my recovery gear's in here, like a snatch block, some gloves for when I'm dealing with my winch line, my air down tool, some bungee cords, some shooting glasses because I always forget them when I go to the range, because during the summer I wear contacts a lot. Anyways, I leave an extra pair of these in here. My tool to air down my tires, or to check my air pressure, my bad. And then since I finished my onboard air system, I carry my 30-foot air line and also my tool to air my tires back up, my gauge and all that. Then another thing that's a good thing to have, especially with rooftop tents and during the winter, which we'll talk about in an Annex video, which I'm going to work on, but a carbon monoxide sensor. If you're running any sort of a heater inside your rooftop tent or inside your Annex, not in your tent, don't do that, put it in an Annex. Get yourself one of these and protect yourself. So then just some zip ties and stuff like that, just things that most of us keep in our trucks all the time. This is also kind of an everyday carry in my truck. Then those boots pretty much hang out right there. Those are my hiking boots. Those are my adventure boots. They pretty much stay back there all the time as well. My water port, if it's like summer, fall, spring, since I've got it, it's pretty much lived right there. It's just really nice to be able to undock that, flip switch, and have water. We'll talk about that in a different video. I feel like I'm saying that a lot, but I just don't want to dive down the rabbit hole on each one of these products because they're all pretty great. So having 4 gallons of water that's just there is great for after a hike or something like that, be able to spray the mud off your shoes, or, you know, put out a campfire before you leave in the morning, make sure you drown that campfire, stuff like that. And then my air compressor's back there. Up here I've got kind of my fishing pole rack, and all these things pretty much live on my truck. So now let's kind of dive into what I throw in my truck when I show up at my storage unit and I just throw everything in the bed of my truck. Alright guys, so now that we're talking about what I add to my rig, assuming that my cooler wasn't already in the bed of my truck, which it usually is, I throw my cooler in there. This is just an Igloo cooler. I have not really convinced myself to spend a very large amount of money on a cooler that something like this might happen to. Also, I'm in the process of working out a solar system, which I'll kind of tease at right now at towards the end of this video, and getting an onboard fridge. So that's kind of my goal for next year. And so I don't really want to spend $300 on a cooler when I'm going to spend $500, $600 on a fridge, and kind of is redundant to me. Anyways, the cooler would go in here. This cooler works great. I usually use reusable ice packs. I like those. I try to pre-freeze all of my drinks, especially waters or anything in a bottle. I try to pre-freeze those 2 days before my trip, so that as many things in the freezer, as many things as possible in the cooler are frozen before they go in there. Dry ice works really well. I like cubed ice if I have to. If I don't have my my reusable ice packs, I like to get a 10-pound block of ice. Those, with the exception of dry ice, seem to work the best for me. So this is an insert to make my Rocket Gator duffel bag a cooler. So I like to use this in the cab as kind of just, it's a soft deal, right? I usually like to put my drinks in here. I just put one of my reusable ice packs in here and some already frozen drinks in here, and then whatever other drinks I get, Arizonas, Rockstars, Monsters, even though I don't drink energy drinks anymore, or my sodas, or just whatever, my Nalgene's, I like to throw those guys in here just so I have it in my cab, so I don't have to get out and hold up the convoy on the trail. Also, it's nice when you've got a lot of food because you're going on a multiple day trip, to keep just pretty much your food in there, your drinks in here, kind of keep things isolated and more organized, help things. I like organization, so that works well for me. Then, depending on the duration of the trip, if it's just an overnight thing, then it's Friday night after work and I'm just going out on a trip real quick, I'm probably not going to add my jerry can, because I'm probably going to grab food on the way and I'm only going to make pancakes in the morning. Depending on if I'm planning on having a fire or not, depending on if this is full or not, I'm probably not grabbing the blue can. I like these guys. They're dime a dozen at any outdoor store. They're 5 gallons of water, and I like the square shape. It just seems to fit in the bed of my truck perfect. So now I've got 2 Plano boxes. This one is the medium size of the 3 here. I have about 4 of these, and I have them labeled with different things. This one is labeled with winter camping. So I like the smaller ones because they fit better. The only downside is these medium-sized ones, they don't have wheels on them. So they don't slide into the back of your truck as nicely as the bigger one does. However, it's only got 2 latches on either side. I really like the design of these boxes. So in this guy, for the time being, what I keep is my propane hoses. I keep my 10-foot hose, and then also, if I could separate them here, and also my adapter to go from a propane tank to most devices that use propane, like a Mr. Buddy heater or a Coleman lantern or a grill or a stove or whatever. So I like to keep this in there as well. So until I get a mount for this is my propane tank. I like this tank a lot. I can run about 3 nights of my Mr. Buddy heater off of this, as opposed to just 1 day or 7 hours off of one of those green Coleman tanks for my Mr. Buddy heater. Also, I can run all of my other camp appliances off this, like a heater, like a grill, or like a lantern of some sort. So, and then the last thing, of course, is my Mr. Buddy heater. This is a must if you live in a place where it snows and you like to overland. So obviously throughout the rest of the year, I'm still using this tank for my grills and stuff like that, so this just ends up kind of getting tossed in my bed, and then my Annex and my Mr. Buddy heater kind of just live in my storage unit during the summer. But kind of no matter where I go here in Utah in the high desert, it gets down to be cold at night. So during the summer, I'll usually just take a nice sleeping bag, but during the winter when it's getting sub-zero up in the mountains or getting, you know, around 10 degrees, I definitely want to have a heater because I'm in this hobby for fun and good times, not for bone-chilling experiences. Huge upgrades from just sleeping bags and hot pads. So now, let's talk about the Annex. I don't want to dive too deep into it because I'm working on editing a video on Annexes right now and how I believe them to be a huge benefit to overlanding, especially when you've got a rooftop tent with an overhang. So I'm not going to dive too far into it, like I said, but Annexes are great, especially if you want to camp during the winter. If you want to camp during the winter overlanding, I think Annexes should be required. And that's how I have my Mr. Buddy heater. I would never put a Mr. Buddy heater just straight into my rooftop tent because I move around when I sleep. If I've got somebody else up there with me as well, I really don't want to kick over that heater and light my tent on fire. Even though they do have an auto off when it rolls over and things like that, and I get that. I just don't want to risk it. Also, I don't want the direct contact with all of the CO2 that it's putting out. I pull all of these boxes out into my Annex, and then on top of one of them I just put my cooking tray and I set my Mr. Buddy heater on top of that, and then boom, the heat rises up. Like I said, I've got a carbon monoxide detector, and I sleep soundly at 80 degrees up in the top of my rooftop tent when it's 20 degrees outside. The last thing I'll usually grab during one of my weekend trips is my larger Plano box. This one is labeled Camping Kitchen. The reason that I have this larger one is because I like to keep relatively the same things on me, no matter what the situation might be, just so that I can kind of get used to having those things. Even if this is way overdue, I like to cook. I like to throw down. If you've ever been out with me or known anybody that's gone out with me on one of these trips, I throw down pretty good food. So I like to make sure I have the right equipment. Okay, so like I said, the majority of this stuff stays in here. Kind of the food elements will change around, but this pretty much comes with me on every camping trip that is vehicle based. I've got a skillet. I like to make hash browns and bacon and pancakes almost every time I go camping, so this is great. Pretty sure it's from Walmart, not super expensive. You can cook with one burner on it. You can do whatever you want with it. Works great. Tin foil, definitely a must because it makes cleanup easier, especially with Dutch ovens, which I'll usually throw in my truck as well. Little camel bag, I've got a cup, a measuring cup that has two different sizes, the one that it doesn't have, and then an extra spatula, then also all my forks, knives, spoons and whatnot, which are all plastic. So I throw that over there. Then this is my backup stove. I just keep this in here because if I don't want to set my grill up, this is usually a really quick and dirty way of making food, and it works every time. Altitude, low altitude, cold temperature, whatever. So that's that. Roll of paper towels, definitely a must. Roll of paper towels. Pam spray, always a good thing. Try not to melt it though. That wasn't me, but there's a funny story behind that. Okay, seasoning salt. This is Brookfield seasoning salt. If you're from Northern California, you'll probably know of the restaurant Brookfield's, little family diner. This is the best seasoning salt that I know of that isn't overpowering in one direction or another. It's just kind of like a salty garlic that everybody likes. Okay, Hungry Jack's pancake mix, the best, without a shadow of a doubt, because You don't need eggs or anything like that. Everything's in there, you just add water. You don't even need oil for it. So, this is the best for camping, in my opinion. Okay. A well-seasoned 10-inch skillet with a lid and the best invention ever. The little rubber piece that goes over it. Definitely a must to me. A cutting board, also super important. I don't really think this is a must, but when you're grilling or when you're, when it's summertime and everybody's throwing down all the time, I got it at Sportsman's Warehouse for like 10 bucks on clearance. Not the greatest kit in the world, but it's got everything that I need in there to scrape my grill, clean it, to, flip my steaks. And, I've done corn on the cob, I've done all these different things here, and the knife sucks, but this country boy shall survive. In here, these Velveeta skillets. These, I'll talk about them in a minute, but I think they are a great invention. Then, nothing special, honestly. This is just the little grill from Walmart. It's like $19, and I've had it for like 8 months now, and the only modification that I've done to it is I've put tin foil over the holes so that it keeps a little bit more of the heat in, and I can kind of smoke with it with some, different flavored wood, put them in there. Also, I like to keep an extra propane tank on me. This usually is in my other container, and I'm not sure why it's not, but this will usually stay with my Mr. Buddy heater. If my big one were to freeze over or leak or not work for some reason, I still want to stay warm that night, so I guess we're running the heater on low, but I am going to use this propane tank. Sponge. Bring a sponge. I like to clean all my stuff before I go home so that I don't bring camping home with me and it becomes less of a chore. Oil, never a bad thing to have. Soap, again, you got a sponge, so you kind of need it. Salt and pepper. And then the gas regulator for this guy. So the Velveeta skillets. These things are great. They're designed for a 10-inch skillet, so everything's proportioned to fit in there with a lid. Boom, you're done. And it's great. So, this one's my favorite, by the way, Nacho Supreme. Crawdad trap. If we're going anywhere where there's water, we're throwing down Louisiana style. So, there's that. If I'm doing some extreme crawling of some sort, which I try to avoid, then I'll get my high lift jack in there. Dutch ovens. If I'm not doing anything really aggressive, if I'm not going to Moab and we're not base camping, this little 8-inch Dutch oven is probably one of my favorite things. You can do anything in a Dutch oven. If you watched part 1, then you'll know that I already have a trip plan before I come to my storage unit, because usually if I'm leaving on a trip, it's Friday right after work. So I like to be planned and know where I'm going, know when I'm meeting up with the people, and know what I'm going to need to bring before that point. So, but if it's spontaneous, I'm usually relatively packed. So that's kind of what the inside of my storage unit looks like. The rest of the scrap is just tools and stuff like that. But since I said I'd tease the solar panels, I'm working on it. And since I've already kind of got my axe here, I've got a hatchet in the back of my truck, I've got my recovery boards, and I've got, my Rotopacks on the other side. There's not a whole lot that I usually throw in here. Really, the only thing that I really throw in the bed of my truck, which I almost never use because I have this wonderful thing called a tailgate, is a little camp chair. People make fun of me for only bringing this when I'm vehicle camping, but such as woe, I don't really think about it. Anyways, there's not really much else. The only thing that I really plan more than anything is the food that's going on the trip. So those 3 bins go in the bed of my truck, and I'm pretty much ready to go. Make sure your Rotopacks are tight, not just the Titan handle here, but make sure the actual plate on the back is tight, and also your rooftop tent. You can't imagine the amount of vibrations that your tent and your bed rack have to go through every day just driving around. Just check that stuff. Just check it, make sure that you're good to go. I know it seems kind of mundane, but make sure your CB radio mount is tight. If you're gonna go doing something aggressive, make sure you're not losing your investment on the trail. So that's just kind of a tip to the wise. Make sure your oil change is up to date. Make sure that you've got some wiper fluid so you can knock all that mud off the front when you hit that mud bog real hard. Make sure your wiper blades are good if it's during the winter. Make sure all your lights are set up that they're not going to get affected by the weather, or also that they're working, because if you're planning on going a couple 100 miles at night or something like that, or go down this really aggressive trail at night, make sure your light bars are all working. I know that kind of makes sense, but I can't tell you the amount of times that I've been out on a trail and they're like, oh shoot, my ditch lights aren't working or something like that. Check that stuff. Make sure you're good to go before your trip. That's also part of the planning stage. All right guys, so that's been my prep video on how I get ready for one of my weekend overlanding trips, whether it's a 1 day, a 2 day, a 3 day, or plus. It really doesn't matter. It all kind of boils down to video number 1, which is get prepared. Video number 2 here, where we're just talking about the things that I'm throwing in there. There's not really too much more that I can fathom that you really need. You've already got your cooler, you've already got your heater, you've already got your sleeping bag. I would assume I didn't need to talk about that stuff, but I keep 4 pillows up there and a sleeping bag year round. Then I'll usually throw another blanket or something like that in the back of my truck. Depending on if I'm bringing someone, they need to bring their gear. And I usually keep my seats laid down flat in the back anyways, because I don't have anybody back there. So I just kind of throw excess gear, drones, camera, tech bag back there, and we're good to go. But guys, this is the gear video. I hope that I've explained enough. I'll try and link the majority of the things below so that you guys can kind of figure out where to get them and for the best prices. Amazon's probably going to do you the best for most things, or Cabela's, because they'll price match. But buy my patch, support me, I appreciate it. Alright guys, be good, be dangerous, be ready, and we'll catch you on the next one. Also, shout out to Warrior Post Society. He's got a really dope t-shirt, very good quality videos. I support John. Alright guys, we'll catch you on the next one. Hey guys, thanks for watching the video. Since you watched the whole thing, why don't you click that button right there that says subscribe. I kind of do a lot of stuff like this, and check me out on Instagram for daily content. You know, it's not like you clicked out of the video. Remember, be good, be dangerous, be ready, and we'll see you on the trail. Oh shoot, I needed the Pam.